Recording in progress.
Hi, Michelle. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good morning.
Morning. Okay, let me go have that Donna comes up and then we go from there, okay?
Sounds good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Yesterday, Michelle taught about environmental causes of infertility and the treatment protocols. If you missed it, it will be available as a CEU video recording starting tomorrow. I just want to say thank you for joining us for today's class. My name is Donna Chow, and I am your host and your moderator for today's eLotus webinar. Here at eLotus, we have been hosting educational courses for over 2 decades, and we are proud to be your trusted source for premium CU content with over 200 speakers, 700 courses, and 3,000 hours of continuing education. Today's webinar is all about treating sensitive patients. I remember back a while ago when the late Dr. Matt Van Benschkoten taught about multiple chemical sensitivity, that there are more and more people with allergies and sensitivities. I will post his video link after class starts in case you're interested in treating multiple chemical sensitivities. While today's class is TCM Treatments for EMF Sensitivity presented by Michelle Marimore. Now, before we begin, I'd like to go over a few items so that you get used to how our webinars work. Today's webinar will be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time, and we will have 4 breaks. For lecture notes, you can download them directly from the Blue Course Access page in your eLotus account. To use the webinar chat room, set your chat preference to everyone so that everyone can see what you're typing and be part of the conversation. To ask Michelle a question, enter your question into the Q&A box. And if time allows, she'll respond to them. And finally, the quiz and the video replay, you will be notified by email tomorrow afternoon once they are available. All right, so our speaker today is Michelle Marimore, who developed the body feedback style of acupuncture, which combines palpitation with classical acupuncture, point prescription, essential oils, Chinese herbs, and nutritional supplements to address health concerns. She is regarded as an acupuncture innovator for incorporating functional medicine into her practice. She uses functional medicine to get to the root problems in difficult cases and provides several treatment options so that patients can choose the treatments that are most comfortable for them. Now let's get started with today's webinar and welcome Michelle Marimore. Michelle, please go ahead and take over by sharing your screen and your PowerPoint.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here again today. This topic of EMF sensitivity is something that when it first started to kind of become more apparent in healthcare and started seeing different trends, and people were complaining a lot about like fluorescent lighting and being on the computer too much. I personally don't feel sensitive to EMFs. So I kind of had a hard time relating. So I was trying to figure out like, okay, why is this happening? What's going on? And then I started doing some DNA testing through this organization called DNA Supplementation with Bob Miller. If anybody's looking for some information on that, let me put his info in here. He's really good. He's got free webinars on Thursday. Nation.com. And then what I realized is there's genetic snippets that make people more prone to EMF sensitivity. And then I started researching it, trying to understand it, classifying it in a TCM type pattern. And actually I've been quite successful recently with the treatments of it. So I'm excited to share with you what I've learned. And I'm just curious, how many people here are seeing a lot of patients with EMF sensitivity? How many people know what it looks like, how to kind of identify it? Is anybody in the group doing more kind of specialization in this area? Just curious. No patients. All right. What I find is that people who are EMF sensitive, when they're younger, it comes out as more kind of emotional issues, attention issues, motivation issues. And then as people get older, it becomes more and more severe. And if we can identify it and kind of alter the course of it when people are younger, it can make a huge impact in their health. So one of the things we're going to do today is look for, hallmark signs of it. We're going to learn how to use the body feedback testing methods to actually test people's cell phones. We're going to look at different ways that we can quickly see if people do have a sensitivity to it in our practice. And then also what to do if people have a lot of symptoms. And also, migraines with overuse of computers is definitely one that's common. There's some people that are just really sensitive. See a lot of teachers in schools might be having a lot of problems. And the kids. I think a lot of patients don't really realize what's going on for them. And sometimes I think that what I find is when I test people's cell phones and they have EMF sensitivity, or sometimes I'll run the DNA for people for their children, and then their children have the EMF sensitivity, but they don't want to feel restricted from technology. So what I've learned is how to kind of work within the world that we're in right now, how to soften the effects of the EMFs for those people who are sensitive to it, and let them decide on how much they want to detach from technology, because it is where we're at and where we're going. And I personally don't think that's going to change. I think we have to figure out how to adapt to it. All right. So, let's see here. Okay. So let's get started. So in this class, we will cover what are electromagnetic fields, EMFs, how they affect health, what causes EMF sensitivity, and then we're going to look at it from a TCM pathology standpoint and use our little TCM parameters to further understand it. The TCM treatment options for EMF sensitivities, and we have a couple case studies. And then we're going to talk about some of the different products that are out there that I've tested for people and I've used on people, and how I handle that in my clinic. So EMF pollution, blue light toxicity. Actually, these glasses have the blue light reduction in them. I'm not EMF sensitive, but my eyes are. I have some visual issues. Okay, electric and magnetic fields, EMFs. According to the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, electric and magnetic fields, EMFs, are invisible areas of energy, often referred to as radiation. Okay, whenever I hear the word radiation, I think heat. That's the first thing that kind of came to my mind is heat. And then I thought to myself, oh yeah, if I hold my cell phone up to my head and talk, my head gets really hot. And if I use like the electronic devices with the Bluetooth, it gets hot, right? So there's the radiation. So I'm starting to think right off the bat, pathogenic heat of some sort. Okay, so often referred to as radiation, associated with the use of electrical power in various forms of natural and artificial lighting. EMFs are typically grouped into one of two categories by their frequency. There's non-ionizing, which is low-level radiation, which is generally perceived as harmless to humans. And this is what we're going to be covering in the class, is kind of what is been approved by the government agencies and technology, but it isn't really harmless. We'll find out here as the day goes on. And ionizing high-level radiation, which has the potential for cellular and DNA damage, including ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma rays. And that is not covered in this class. So extremely low EMF fields, 3 hertz to 3 kilohertz, known as ELF EMF, are emitted from electrical wiring, lamps, and appliances. Very low EMF fields, 3 kilohertz to 3 megahertz, known as VLF EMF, are due to, due to harmonic voltage and current distortions from electrical wiring, lamps, compact fluorescent lamps, and electrical devices. Then we have radio frequency radiation, RFs, 3 megahertz to 300 gigahertz, are emitted from TV broadcast antennas, Wi-Fi access points, routers, smartphones, tablets, cordless phones, mobile phones, including their base stations and Bluetooth devices. So what I noticed is with people with EMF sensitivity, they often start off as sensitive to this radio frequency category, which is the Wi-Fi, the smartphones. And as their sensitivity progresses and their body can't handle it, then they become even more sensitive to the very low EMF fields. And then over time, they get even more sensitive just to electrical wiring, lamps, appliances, and the nervous system can't handle a lot of it. Also, there's been a lot of studies that show that long-term exposure to some of these very low EMFs can actually be quite damaging. So, have you noticed that people are affected by different types of the EMFs? Yep. Yeah, I think I just answered that one. Yeah, I feel like it starts off as this higher radio frequency, and more people are sensitive to that, and then it just gets more sensitive and sensitive. Okay. Repeated Wi-Fi studies show that Wi-Fi causes oxidative stress, sperm testicular damage, neuropsychiatric effects, endocrine changes, calcium overload, DNA damage, and cellular apoptosis, which is basically cellular death. EMFs produce the above 7 effects mainly by pathological activation of the voltage gate calcium channel, the VGCC, and other minor mechanisms of action. So how many people here have heard of this calcium channel? I know a lot of times we'll hear about people on like high blood pressure medicine or heart medication that are calcium channel blockers. That was the first thing that kind of went off in my head, was like, oh, the people that I know that have to take these calcium channel blockers, they're very sensitive to computers, EMFs, lights, different things. And so that's when I found in the DNA testing that this is kind of where it all stems from, actually. And they've been able to prove quite a bit, which I was happy to see, because sometimes I think these people think that the world thinks that they're crazy because they have these sensitivities and people don't understand it. And as practitioners and healthcare practitioners, if we can help them to understand what's occurring for them, what the pathology, the progression of pathology looks like, how we can stop it and reverse it. And they can even look at their DNA and see if that's where it's coming from. Great. Voltage gated calcium channels, VGCC, are pathways that allow calcium to initiate many physiological events. Distinct roles are served by these subfamilies. So we have the first calcium V1 subfamily, initiates contraction, secretion, and regulation of gene expression in skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle. So what does that mean? So it means that this particular calcium channel initiates and regulates the muscles, smooth muscles in the skeletal system and in the heart. And the one thing I noticed a lot about the EMF sensitive people is they just have a lot of muscle pain. It almost acts like fibromyalgia pain. And then they have heart issues that they often end up having to take calcium channel blockers for eventually if their blood pressure goes too high. And then we've got the CAV2 subfamily, which is primarily responsible for initiating the fast release of classical neurotransmitters like glutamate, acetylcholine, and GABA. So this is really important for people with attention deficit disorders, insomnia, problems sleeping, problems focusing and concentrating. So the glutamate is a natural excitatory neuron that creates more excitement in the brain and has the brain be more active. And acetylcholine we'll talk about in a little bit with this one form. That's a neurotransmitter that has to do with mental health issues, focus. And then GABA, which is a relaxing neuron and helps people to sleep. And so the EMFs can disrupt these pathways. The calcium V3 subfamily is important for the repetitive firing that creates the heartbeat, drives sleep spindles, and controls sleep. So a lot of people who have EMF sensitivity have issues with their heart beating too fast. They have a tachycardia. In the adrenal cortex, they regulate the secretion of aldosterone, which stimulates the absorption of sodium by the kidneys to regulate water and salt balance. And I think this is part of, in addition to the first group, why so many people with EMF sensitivity end up with high blood pressure. And most of these people are thinner, or they're not like your overweight, puffy kind of people that need diuretics to like reduce the water. These people actually tend to seem kind of yin deficient and dry already. I believe these two mechanisms, the CAV1 and CAV3 families, that have them prone to have high blood pressure. Mutations in the CAV channels cause absence epilepsy, in which affected individuals enter a trance sleep-like state that interrupts their normal activities. So I'm actually treating a person for this right now. And what I realized is every member in their family that I'm treating, I treat several members of their family, are EMF sensitive. So I think that's where my one client's issues are coming from, because otherwise he's perfectly healthy. So calcium channel blockers are medications used to treat hypertension, irregular heartbeat, and chest pain by slowing the amount of calcium into the heart and arteries. Examples of calcium channel blockers are I have such a problem with these medication names. Anyway, you guys can read the examples of calcium channel blockers. The common side effects of these medications include constipation, dizziness, that's a big one I hear, fast heartbeat, palpitations, fatigue, flushing, headache, nausea, rash, and swelling in the feet and lower legs. So as you can see, a lot of people that I have that are on calcium channel blockers actually ask to be able to be taken off them. They're like, can you take care of my blood pressure to get me off my calcium channel blockers? And I've been successful with that if I can kind of catch the person early enough. I've been able to reverse it very early and kind of prevent it. It's much easier with our medicine to prevent disease than it is to treat disease after it's already set in for years. People who take calcium channel blockers are slowing the amount of calcium entering the heart and arteries. when people with hypertension, irregular heartbeat, or chest pain, taking calcium channel blockers, check for EMF sensitivity using their cell phone and the body feedback testing. This is the easiest thing to do in the clinic. I don't claim it to be like any kind of scientific way to diagnose EMF sensitivity, but it does provide me enough information to be able to make recommendations that are for people with EMF sensitivity and maybe look at a few tests for that and get some decent results. Yeah. Check supplements that benefit people with EMF sensitivity discussed later in this class and avoid excessive calcium supplementation. So that's one thing is when people have the EMF sensitivity, what's happening is the calcium that enters into the cells, there's a little thin membrane, a cell membrane with that kind of opens up. So it opens up and then it closes up and opens up to let the calcium into the cells. And what happens with EMF sensitivity is that little membrane gets damaged. And so it ends up staying open and it lets too much calcium into the cells. And then the cells burst and they die off, and then it's an inflammatory process. And those cells are basically dead and gone. So it is a very real phenomena that has to do with this membrane that is supposed to monitor and manage the amount of calcium that goes into the cells. And it's about energy. Let me see if that's what I talk about next. The downstream effects of VGCC activation include calcium signaling, elevated nitric oxide signaling, peroxynitrite, free radical formation, and oxidative stress. So basically, the downstream effects are cellular damage, inflammation, and free radicals. That's kind of how I look at it and explain it to my clients, is that when the membrane is damaged and their body's letting too much calcium into the cells, the calcium becomes toxic, creates inflammation, creates free radicals, damages the cell, and eventually can destroy the cell and cause the cell death. That's how I explain it simply to the clients. Downstream effects explain repeatedly reported biological responses such as oxidative stress, single and double strand breaks in cellular DNA, cancer, male and female infertility, lowered melatonin, sleep disruption, cardiac changes including tachycardia, arrhythmia, and sudden cardiac death, and diverse neuropsychiatric effects, including depression. Whoa, that's a lot. That's heavy. I mean, that's the path that, unfortunately, a lot of people with this advanced EMF sensitivities, they're down this pathway, and that can be pretty devastating for people. So once I kind of really realized how serious this was, I want to screen everybody for it. I screen all of my clients to see if they might have some EMF sensitivity, and definitely get them on a path that mends that cell membrane, because you can fix the cell membrane that manages the calcium, and get them so they don't end up going down this path. Yeah, all from EMFs. Like, I don't think that a lot of healthcare providers, I don't think many in the actual Western medical field are really understanding the implications of this. And the research is incredible. We're going to spend probably an hour or two going through the research and talking about it in TCM terms, because I was just shocked on how much like real proof, double-blind studies that are showing, these are the things that are happening. So I know you guys care about your people too. And I know that you're interested in like, okay, how do we prevent this? How do we like screen for it? How do we do something really simple to alter the path of people's health? And that's what we're going to do today. That's what we're going to learn today. and I find that I'm getting great results and my people are feeling so much better. The acupuncture is lasting so much longer. They're getting better benefits from their supplements. They don't have to take as many different types of supplements because I'm able to kind of really narrow it down to the ones that make the most difference in their health. And so I'm excited to share that with you guys so that you can go out and do the same thing too. All right. So first thing we're going to do is look at this gene, because this is the gene mutation that causes a lot of issues for people with the EMF sensitivity. It's the CACNA1C gene. So this gene provides instructions for transporting positively charged calcium atoms, calcium ions, into cells to generate electrical signals. So I thought to myself, electrical signals, that sounds like the meridian system, because the meridian system is all about how the body moves energy around. And I thought, wow, I bet the meridian system is the first one to feel the negative effects from this. So we as acupuncturists should be able to figure this out before it becomes a real pathology. So calcium ions are important for regulating the electrical activity of cells, cell-to-cell communication, the tensing of muscle fibers, muscle contraction, and the regulation of certain genes, particularly those involved in the development of the brain and bones before birth. Ooh, that's where it gets even a little bit scary, because a lot of people nowadays were exposed to so much EMF. If they have a lot of EMF sensitivities and they're getting pregnant, they're, I think, at a higher risk for having issues with their children. And so it's really important. And some of the EMF supplements and a lot of the other devices we can use are safe for pregnancy. So that's really good news too. All right. Yeah, so we have anion deficiency symptoms, got to do earthing, walking barefoot, conductive footwear, earthing pillowcases, blankets, sheets, mats, and so on. Yeah, I have a couple of EMF sensitive clients that really like the earth. They sleep on earth, some type of sheets like grounding sheets. There's a lot of materials and cloths that are made nowadays that can help with the EMF sensitivity. We're going to talk about it at the end today. So this gene provides instruction for making CAV1.2 calcium channels found in many cells, and they are particularly important for heart cells, the cardiomyocytes, and the nerve cells, the neurons in the brain, which is why I think we see so much autonomic nervous system dysfunction with the EMF sensitivity. So Riza, how do you ground all patients during the treatments? I'm just curious. In the heart, these channels open up and close at specific times to control the flow of calcium ions into the heart muscle at each heartbeat. In the brain, these channels are involved in memory, the fear response, and the rapid transmission of nerve signals. So from a TCM standpoint, we can see that people that have this gene mutation might be more prone to anxiety, autonomic nervous system dysfunction, adrenal dysfunction. All of them, all of my EMF sensitive clients with this gene issue, they all really identify themselves with adrenal dysfunction. That's a big thing that I see with this. And so, and a lot of times this looks like it could be like a family tendency. It is definitely in the genetics. So I think sometimes if like clients have mental illness issues or struggling with mental health, I'll ask them, you know, did somebody else in your family, do your parents or aunts and uncles, do they have similar mental health issues? And they'll be like, oh yeah, da 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 da. And then I'm thinking, okay, they might have all had EMF sensitivity. And so it's really important when you have people that are kind of showing this in your clinic to start to think EMF sensitivity. Does this marker show up on 23andMe? I have to look. I have somebody's raw data that I want to go through right now. I think I can do that. I'll have enough time to do it on lunch. I use a different software, and I can run the 23andMe data through it. So I'm going to look at that real quick at lunch and see if it's showing up right now. 23andMe for gene testing, they used to report all of the snippets. And a couple years ago, they decided they didn't want to release all the information in the raw data. So when people are downloading their raw data to kind of look for some of this, they used to release it all, and now they don't. And when people get their gene testing done through 23andMe, 23andMe actually owns the data. So they can release what they want. They can do what they want with it. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. I'm not quite sure how they're using it, but I do know that they are using it with law enforcement when they're trying to identify people who are criminals and they have some DNA evidence. They're running it through the 23andMe and Ancestry.com databanks. But there's a company I use through Bob Miller's company, and they do the DNA testing kind of off the grid so that the person owns their DNA rights and they get to have access to all of the information. And they're the ones that decide what they're going to do with it. All right, so I will look into that at lunch. All right, so anyway, just start to think when you're talking with your clients, or if you have clients that you think might fit this kind of scenario, make sure you start to test them for EMFs sensitivity. So these gene variants are one of the most universally reproduced risk genes for neuropsychiatric disorders, including bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, and is also recently identified in the largest human genome-wide association study as one of only 2 genes presenting a common risk factor across 5 major forms of neuropsychiatric illness, major depression, bipolar disorder, autism, schizophrenia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Whoa. So I can see this as being a big part of some of the major mental illness that's going on in the world with the mass shootings and just the horrible things that people are doing because they're just basically going crazy. And I feel like that all the EMF sensitivities and a lot of those people I think are isolating themselves with computers and computer games, and it's just making everything worse. Yep, we're going to talk about how to do the body feedback testing. So body feedback is a system that I created, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So let's go back through some of these warning signs. So symptoms of the EMF sensitivity. Among the more commonly reported changes are sleep disturbances, insomnia, headache, depression, depressive symptoms, fatigue, tiredness, dysesthesia, touch and sensory hypersensitivity, concentration, attention dysfunction, memory changes, dizziness, irritability, loss of appetite, restlessness, anxiety, nausea, EEG changes, and skin burning, tingling, and dermographism. Now, just think about what happened when we went through COVID, right? And we have all these people now working from home, doing Zoom meetings all day long, sitting in front of their computer instead of meeting in person. And we had a huge, and the students, right? The students that ended up having to do school all online and sitting in front of a computer for 10 hours a day. And we now have this huge explosion of mental health issues. I know you guys are probably seeing the same thing we're seeing here is people are looking for therapists. There's a shortage of therapists. There's so much more intense mental health issues since COVID. Well, I'm wondering, is part of this intense issue because now everybody is doing things virtually, right? That's what I'm starting to think. So if you have people that are a lot more symptomatic, since being at home with COVID or doing a lot of remote work now, this could be part of it. Substantial evidence exists that microwave EMFs from cell mobile phone base stations, excessive cell mobile phone usage, wireless smart meters can produce similar patterns of neuropsychiatric effects, with several of these studies showing clear dose response relationships. That's one thing we'll see when we go through these studies, is that the more people are exposed to the EMFs, the worse it is for sure. So studies on EMFs. Workers at a power plant exposed to the ELF EMFs, so that's kind of that mid-range one we saw, have significantly elevated pro-inflammatory markers and elevated white blood cell counts, red blood cell counts, lymphocyte percentage, mean corpus volume, MCV, platelet count, procalcitonin compared to the unexposed group. The levels of interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, white blood cell count, lymphocytes, red blood cell count, hematocrit were higher in technicians who had the highest levels of exposure to the magnetic fields. So right there, we're starting to see there's an immune system component. So this is like, when I started thinking about this, it's like, okay, so we've got these basically unseen pathogens, right, that trigger immune system responses, and they enter in through the body until they get deeper and deeper and do more and more damage. Kind of reminds me of viruses, right? We can't see viruses. They get into the body. The longer they're there, the more damage they tend to do. So I'm starting to think, okay, this is almost like an exterior wind type pathogen. So we'll see how that plays out. I created my own little pathogenic pathways for these, and it's based kind of on really seeing how these EMFs affect the immune system. EMF exposure led to depression-like neurobehavior and gut microbial imbalance. Heat accumulation alleviated the depression caused by EMF exposure. Based on the analysis of the gut microbia, we speculated that gut microbia might play a vital role in the cross tolerance provided by heat accumulation. The temperature-based So basically what this study did is they noticed that people who had depression-like symptoms had gut flora imbalances. And so again, this is the whole enteric nervous system between the small intestine and the brain. And so it's that gut brain psychology again. And so they were able to see that the EMFs actually damaged the gut flora. Isn't that interesting? And then what they found was heat accumulation, which is kind of like a sauna is what I'm thinking, where they started with a base temperature of 82 degrees and they increased it to 95 degrees over time, helped to repair the EMF exposure. Yeah, I do. I like the wind heat toxicity. That's exactly kind of how I see this. So I personally love my infrared sauna, which is supposed to have the lower EMFs. They're supposed to have some type of EMF protection in the infrared sauna that I have. At least that's what they claim. And I feel fine in it. But I feel like that really helps people emotionally and physically, and also the biomats. So heat accumulation refers to a series of adaptive physiological responses, cross-tolerance to long-term repeated exposure to moderately high environmental temperatures. Studies have confirmed that heat accumulation can alleviate central nervous system injury caused by heat stroke and enhance the protective effect of other stimuli besides high temperature. Heat accumulation can regulate the microglial inflammatory activation of EMF exposure. So I personally sleep on a biomat. Oh, I love my biomat too. Peter, you got a biomat. I have a biomat on my treatment tables. I am in Wisconsin in the Midwest, and it's cold. It's cold here. So I have the biomat on the treatment tables also to make it more comfortable for the clients. But I feel like the biomat is part of what keeps me so healthy. And I actually sleep on one at night. And I feel like that's been great. Could this be part of climate warming? I don't know about that, but I don't think so, because the heat accumulation, I think, is the back and forth, the long-term repeated exposure, where climate warming is just heating everybody up. So I don't think it's the same thing. Chronic EMF exposure was associated with serum lipid levels and lipid metabolism changes. So that's fats, right? And hormones are made from fats. So if EMF is causing issues with the cholesterol and fat absorption, then that's going to be affecting how the hormones are. Yep, I'll send you guys I can see if I can put a link on there. Korean water mats are great too. Warm water circulates. Oh, I didn't know about that. I'm going to have to check out that. I love Korean technology. Korean water mats. I'm going to check that out. So longer EMF exposure and more mobile phone use had significantly higher total cholesterol, LDL, or triglyceride levels. Decreased HDL cholesterol was observed in the high EMF exposure group with more mobile phone use. So I think this is like the accumulation of the damages of EMFs over time, because we're seeing people younger and younger having high cholesterol, right? We're seeing teenagers nowadays with high cholesterol, which I think used to be unheard of. So if you have clients that are struggling with their cholesterol, you could also be thinking, I wonder if they've had too much long-term EMF exposure. Studies show chronic exposure to EMF could decrease male plasma testosterone and the testosterone to estrogen ratio, possibly affecting male reproductive functions. There were no significant associations of EMF exposure with inflammatory pathway biomarkers found when they're looking at, this is just specific to the testosterone estrogen ratio. Daily occupational EMF exposure was positively associated with poor sleep quality. These study results imply that EMF exposure may damage human sleep quality rather than sleep duration. So we could look at all the people that complain that they just don't feel rested when they get up. So this could be affecting them. So can you guys start to see that, like, some of these symptoms are probably 80% of our client base? And I do think that 80% of the people have some EMF sensitivity. I don't know if it's, so that calcium channel gene, there's several genes that make up that grouping, and people can have one gene mutation, or they can have two gene mutations, one from each parent, affecting each one of those gene types. And then there's several gene types in there. I'll grab that at lunch. I didn't think to do that. So EMF studies often produce conflicting results due to the study parameters. Successful studies focus on specific physiological processes. Different types of EMFs affecting the participant can distort the results. Genetic mutations, such as the gene we've been talking about, can cause increased sensitivity to EMFs and also distort the results. So I think when they are looking at EMF issues, they might have to start to really look at the studies and group people by gene mutations, because I feel like that will give them better the ability to repeat the results. Yeah. Actually, I've been happy with my sauna I got from Costco. It's rated, I think, like number 2 for the saunas, and it's a lot cheaper than the number 1 rated. And I've been very happy with it, and my clients have been very happy with it. So I personally just got my sauna on sale through Costco. And then Biomat is a particular brand, and we can talk about that at the very end. EMF pathology using 6-level theory. So yeah, where are we at on time? 11:44. Okay, so we got a half an hour. Perfect. So this is where I was looking at it as an exterior wind heat pathogen. Cholesterol can protect the inner systems from many kinds of overload. Yep. Who was the one that? Yep, Thomas, who said wind heat toxicity. Yep, that's kind of what I look at it as, is EMF pathology using 6-level theory. So in my body feedback system, which is it's a way of using TCM and looking at it from the classics. So what I did is I created a system that uses the Korean 4-point point prescriptions with the added Chinese 2 points, which makes them the Chinese 6-point prescriptions. I don't know if you guys have heard of those. They're highly effective, and I figured out a way to use them with palpation techniques, which we'll talk about, to identify what meridian is the weakest, needing the most attention in the body. And then in the classics, I found quite a bit of information that guides the healing process. So my system is very much rooted in classical TCM acupuncture. And in that, they use quite a bit of 6-level theory. So my system looks at meridian pairs, often is the 6-level pairs. So we would have Tai Yang, Yang Ming, Xiao Yang, then Tai Yin, Xiao Yin, and Shui Yin. And so that's kind of how I started looking at it for how EMFs penetrate the body. So that's what we're going to talk about for the next half hour. EMFs can be classified as exterior heat or pathogenic qi because they generate low levels of radiation, right? Radiation is heat. EMFs enter the body from the exterior, and they are not internally generated, right? So it would definitely be an exterior pathogen. Unseen pathogens that enter the body are thought to travel on the wind, which causes EMFs to behave like exterior wind heat. And body feedback theory uses a 6-level theory to describe how EMFs penetrate and cause pathology within the body. So we're going to talk about that. And it makes sense too, because if you think about the people who have the most severe EMF sensitivities are often having neurological issues. And that's wind, right? That's when wind becomes internal wind. That's when the body's damaged so much and the blood is damaged so much that then they have internally generated wind. So I think it starts exterior, and if it goes for too long, deep enough in the body, it ends up acting almost like an interior wind. Yeah, so the 6 points we have. So I'm just going to, before we go any farther, I'm just going to bring this up really quick, is the appendix. How many people are on from yesterday? Because we talked about this yesterday, but I think there's enough people that are new that we could look at so we got a few new here from yesterday. So we're going to look at the appendix, really. Oh, great. Everybody, a lot of people were on yesterday. That's awesome. We got a few new ones. Okay, through. So let me pull that up really quick so we can look at the appendix, which you guys should have been able to download. So how do I get out of there we go. So I have it right here. So this is one of the things I'm including in with your class notes. So this appendix 1 is the master summary worksheet. And basically what it does is it gives you the muscle associations with also the organ referral areas, and then the body feedback meridian balancing points, which we'll talk about when we do the case studies. So these are basically 4 points. 2 of them come from the Korean 4-point, and 2 of them are the Chinese 6-point. What I realized is there was an overlap between those 2 classical point combinations, that I could reorder them based on the controlling cycle. And you'll see that as we go through the case study. And it's basically 4 points that are very strong, and when used together will balance a meridian and also help with organ function. And then once the meridian is identified as being the root problem, then you can add either the sedation points or the tonification points. And we test for all these. So basically the client's body becomes the vehicle, or the way we choose our points. So instead of looking for like classical applications, and I mean, of course we'll use our education and think about it, but the guiding factors for which points you use actually come from testing the client's body. And then the client's body will tell us where the root of the problem is. And then I found that these treatments are very effective, and they usually hold for about 3 to 4 weeks. And people will feel some permanent results. And often, if it's like overriding genetic issues, they'll last for about a month. And so we have all the different trisections. So in the 6-level theory, we've got the yin and yang, the original separation of yin and yang. And I talk about this in my textbook, but basically it creates the levels. So we have Tai Yin, which is lung and spleen, and inside that is Yang Ming. So that's the first trisection. And this is the 8-hour window on the Chinese clock. If you guys are familiar with the Chinese clock, how it's arranged, it's based on, the trisections are based on that. And then in the second trisection, we have the heart and kidney, the Shao Yin, and then we have the small intestine and urinary bladder, the Tai Yang. And again, these are the muscle associations. So these are the muscles you'd look for to see if they're tight or painful. And then you can test the points to see if you have the right root prescription. We'll go through that when we do the case studies. But here's the meridian balancing points again, and then the sedation and tonification points. And then what I did was I added another appendix for commonly used supporting points that I found work really good with the root treatments. And that's where you get to add like your TCM points or anything you want to add there, as long as it tests well and it's not one of these 5-element points. And then as I've been teaching this over the years, I realized that a lot of these points aren't used that much. Like we learn about them in school because they're the antique points. And then we often don't use them if we're doing just a straight TCM type of treatment. So I have like point location diagrams for you guys so you can see where they're at and the proper direction to needle in, because that makes a big difference too. So that's what's part of your handouts. Okay, so you'll have all that there. All right, let's get back to here. Oh, good. I'm so glad you guys liked yesterday. Okay, so I think the more you hear it, and then also I figured out how to play some of my little testing videos for you guys so you can actually see it working. So, okay, where were we at? So, yep, so we're going to use the 6-level theory. EMFs enter the body first through the Tai-yang level, affecting the urinary bladder, which is in my system, the autonomic nervous system, and the small intestine, which is the enteric nervous system. So I think that's the first thing we see is the mental emotional disruption and the neuropsychiatric conditions that we just talked about in the studies. And I think that's why we see it so much in the kids, because this is the first level that's affected. And as the EMF pathology is like when people are exposed to the EMFs longer and longer, and those calcium channels get damaged more and more, then the EMFs get to the next level. But I think the first thing we're going to see with the EMF pathology is the mental health issues and the sleep issues, and probably like dysbiosis and small bowel bacteria overgrowth or different things going on with the microbiome, which I think is huge too. Then in the body feedback system, the Tai-yang meridians correspond with the hypothalamus, which determines how information is processed through the autonomic nervous system. The hypothalamus then creates hormones via the pituitary gland and the endocrine system connection. So I think that this, again, is where people are having so much mental health issues. So I always talk about the hypothalamus is kind of like the filter. It's how we see the world. So it's kind of like the filtering mechanism in which our nervous system processes stimulus from around us. And then we create a story that then generates emotions. And so usually people who have kind of like, I think like kind of like an altered perception of reality, like they have like their perception of how reality is a bit different. I think a lot of those people are struggling with hypothalamus issues, and a lot of times they'll need urinary bladder, small intestine support and or help. And then this is how I think it also affects hormones. Symptoms of EMFs affecting Tai-yang include poor quality sleep, general hypersensitivity, autonomic nervous system dysfunction, and that's where you get like the adrenal adrenal overload, and weak immune function and moodiness. So this is kind of, I think, what we see a lot in kids that are exposed to EMFs for too long. Do you think EMF wind heat toxicity is the root cause of adrenal burnout? Observed in clinic as much as 97% patient demographic as far as Ragland's test confirming systolic blood pressure dropping from lying to standing up. Yeah, that is, I do. Thomas, thanks for that comment. And you guys, I'd love to have interaction with these classes, even though we're on Zoom. So please use the chat room to, share your ideas or thoughts or questions. So I do think EMF wind heat toxicity is the root cause of the adrenal burnout. So most of my clients that have, well, I have one that has this that doesn't seem to have EMF toxicity or EMF sensitivity. It didn't show up in her genes, and she's not sensitive to her cell phone, and she has this, but she does have really, really low lithium levels. So I think she has a different pathology, but the same end result. So what happens for people is they get their autonomic nervous system gets put on overdrive, and they're just super sensitive. They get really sensitive to like driving on the highway, sensitive to stress. They're just hypersensitive to the world around them. And then they also end up with their blood pressure and or heart rate changing quite a bit when they go from laying down to sitting up. And most of them that I'm thinking about in my practice do have sensitivities to their cell phones, except for there's one that I can think, like I said, that has a lithium issue. So in the studies, they found that lithium is one of the minerals that can restore that cell membrane for the calcium entering into the cells. However, I will only recommend nutritional lithium if I have them do a metals test to see if they actually need it. And so that's how I found it on this one woman, as her lithium levels were really, really low. And so she takes a small amount of nutritional lithium and feels so much better. And she doesn't have the adrenal burnout. And also she has a lot of these same type of symptoms are better. So I don't know if you could say it's 100% EMF, but in my practice, when I think about my patient population and who I've tested phones on, it's got to be like 75%, I would think. Yep, we'll talk a little bit about the lithium later today when we talk about ways to treat it. Yep, lithium is old age dementia prevention. Yeah, lithium is really great if you need it. And what dose of lithium? She actually, so I muscle test all my supplements, and she tests best to orthomolecular's lithium orotate. There's different companies have different lithium for some reason. I have pure encapsulations also, and she just takes one like every other day because there's a 10 milligram dose. And I felt like she was better at a lower dose, like 5 milligrams, but because they only sell it in 10 milligrams, she takes it every other day, and it seems to work out. Yeah, a deeper view of adrenal burnout. The adrenals, when hyperstimulated, keep the inner trauma and emotions from coming up the individual's awareness. Peter, can you explain that? A deeper view of adrenal burnout. The adrenals, when hyperstimulated, keep the inner trauma and emotions from coming up the individual's awareness. So I think you're saying that the adrenal hyperstimulation keeps that trauma deep and suppressed, which I think is just an autonomic nervous system and hypothalamus dysfunction, and or like the people can't process it, probably. I have this whole idea. We might as well talk about this right now, guys. I believe that when people are able to process the emotional issues that bother them, then the solutions to their physical health work. So I have some clients that I feel like are avoiding dealing with certain emotional issues because they can't process them, or I don't know what, because I'm not a therapist. I don't really go there, but I can just tell that there's some emotional baggage, and then nothing works. Like they go from practitioner to practitioner to practitioner, or like they stick with me. I'm not even sure why, but they must get some benefit from it. But when we try something, it doesn't work. We try something, it doesn't work. But what I noticed is that when people like get some type of completion on their emotional issues, then the physical, just like the physical solution to their physical problems, shows up and works. So the thing I like too about the body feedback acupuncture points, I feel like it works on a spiritual level because it works, I think, at a deep level in the body. Like I think the extra vessels work at this deep level too. So I feel like our medicine can help people to process things emotionally on a cellular level that they don't have to talk about. Like we don't have to do talk therapy. Their body can process it on a cellular level through the acupuncture, and hopefully get some relief. Yeah, cool. Okay, so where are we at here? Was I back here? Okay, so yeah, we're talking a lot about that. And I do believe that this mental health issues that EMF causes are definitely affecting the autonomic nervous system, which is the adrenals, the hypothalamus. And so those are the people that just have your red flag up for EMF sensitivity. Personally, I hope you guys test every single person that comes into your practice and helps every single person become aware, are they really that EMF sensitive or not? So EMF pathology. EMFs pass deeper in the body to the second level through the yang ming, affecting the stomach, the initial stage of digestion, and the large intestine, the immune system. So remember in that study where we saw all those immune system factors that were thrown off. So this is where, so now the EMFs have gotten into the body at a deeper level, and they're starting to alter the initial stages of digestion, which I think has to do with some of the cholesterol and the fats, the red blood cells, those different markers that we saw on that one study, and then also the different immune system markers. In the body feedback system, the yang meridians coordinate the digestive and immune system functions. So this is where the digestive and the immune system works as one unit. So I see a lot of people that have dysfunction between those two systems, which makes sense if you look at how destructive food intolerances and food allergies can be, and what a problem that can be for some people. Symptoms affecting Yang Ming include excessive histamine, allergies, immune weakness, chronic infections, and elevated inflammation. So we're going to see that coming up. There's some Western science behind this, but the EMFs are known to increase mast cell production, which is what's triggering the histamine response. So I know you guys are seeing this in your clinic where more and more people are having allergies and excessive histamine issues. I know that's definitely a big problem today. So is that in part related to all the EMFs around? Could be. Okay. So EMFs pass deeper in the body to the third level through Xiaoyang, affecting the gallbladder, the digestion of fats, and the triple burner, the immune system. So this is where the white blood cells come into play too. In the body feedback system, the Xiaoyang meridians coordinate the digestion of fats to create hormones that complete the inflammatory cycle. So we're going to see the EMFs. Remember that first or second slide we talked about, that they create all these free radicals, inflammation, cellular problems. I think that's what we see when the EMFs have gotten to damage the body into the Xiaoyang level. So symptoms affecting Xiaoyang include headaches, chronic inflammation, improper digestion of fats, and elevated white blood cells and lymphocytes. And I think, it's this that when we start to see people coming in for a lot of acupuncture treatments, I think when people start to get to this chronic inflammatory state, which is one of the biggest precursors to disease, I think, the improper digestion of fats, that's going to create all kinds of problems, and immune system dysfunction at a deeper level, basically in the lymph system. The EMFs pass deeper in the body to the fourth level, Tai Yin, affecting the spleen, which is the creation of blood and blood sugar, and the lung, the oxygenation of the blood. So this is where we're starting to see, I think, a lot more cardiac issues, maybe starting to get a little bit of internal wind, maybe because the blood issues. So in the body feedback system, Tai Yin meridians influence the quality of blood, energy for the cells, and blood sugar regulation. Symptoms affecting Tai Yin include fatigue, sleep apnea, elevated MCV, platelet count, and excessive calcium in the blood. So this is where we're starting to be able to see the pathology show up in the blood. So excessive platelets, did you guys know that excessive platelets is like one of the markers for excessive inflammation and cellular apoptosis and cellular damage? So I do a lot of functional medicine work and functional medicine testing. And when I see platelets start to creep up about 325, 350, 350, that's usually a sign of a lot of cellular damage and inflammation in the body. So we can look at that too. EMFs pass deeper in the body to the fifth level through the Xiaoyin, affecting the kidney, life force, and the heart, Shen. In the body feedback system, the Shaoyin meridians correspond with the adrenals, ovaries, and pituitary, or your FSH hormones. So in my body feedback system, I actually have the heart as one of the meridians that has to do with the pituitary that puts the adrenals into overdrive. So a lot of times it's a heart sedation treatment according to the body feedback point prescriptions that come up for people that are stuck in adrenal overdrive. And I know that some people that are like really into the TCM approach to the heart say, oh, you can never drain the heart. You can never drain the heart. But as you can see, if the heart's getting bombarded with way too much calcium, because that's one of the organs that gets affected first with this calcium channel issue, there is excess pathology in the heart. There's too much calcium. So the heart sedation treatment is appropriate. And then it does calm the adrenal response down. So we'll say that. So platelets being over 350 or 450 indicates excessive free radical damage, excessive inflammation, cellular apoptosis. And for some people, really high platelets can actually be a warning sign of cancer or a lot of precancerous cells. So that's when we see a lot of the more severe damage affecting the DNA from the EMFs and people being stuck in a heightened inflammatory response. Western medicine draws blood every 3 months for too much platelets. Yeah, but they're not getting to the root of it. They just try and deal with some of the symptoms. So symptoms affecting Shaoyin include Shen disturbance, anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, ADHD and ADD, infertility, hypertension, cardiac disorders, and congenital disabilities. So that's when we're seeing the EMF pathology has gotten basically to the DNA level, right? The kidney life force, I always look at as the DNA level. And so, you know, how the DNA mutations work is like people have genetics and it's usually a stressful event or ongoing exposure to certain pathologies that then trigger those gene mutations to start to be destructive to health. So it's kind of like, you know, if people have like, I know we've all heard of the BRCA breast cancer gene, right? Well, that's one that has a really high prevalence for creating cancer, but it's not 100%, right? Some people can have that gene mutation that sets them up for cancer, but they don't end up getting breast cancer. It's not 100%. It's either emotional stress, physical stress, or some type of pathological influence that the body just can't tolerate anymore. And then it expresses that gene mutation. And then the things start to get really bad with health. So I believe that when the EMF pathology gets to this deeper Shaoyin level in the kidney level, it's when now the gene mutations are starting to express themselves and they're going to have a lot of adverse health responses to the EMFs because the gene mutation has been turned on to more of a pathological expression. Mm-hmm. So do your clients, when they go to their regular Western doctor, like I don't really order blood tests. Clients in Wisconsin can self-order their own their own labs through the naturopathic clinic in town. So because it's not really in our scope of practice, I don't order them, but my clients, they bring their tests in. Do you guys clients, when they get blood work, do they bring them in to you because they think you want to see them? Or is that just a Wisconsin thing? Or is that just a Michelle thing? Yeah, only if asked. Sometimes. Yeah, a lot of my clients like me to take a quick peek at them. And yep, do functional medicine too. Yeah, I really like Apex training. I love their training. There's a few of their supplements I like, but mostly I just like their training for blood chemistry. I thought that training was some of the best. Yeah, Apex. I did like a really basic functional medicine training class for eLotus. I don't know if they still have it up or not, on how we as acupuncturists can analyze basic blood tests to look at how to recommend certain supplements and different things like that. Yeah. So when in the case study too, I believe, yeah, this one second case study I have a whole bunch of blood work and different things. And we'll look at the markers that are elevated. And it was kind of cool because when I look back at it, she brought me all these labs and it was so clear that she had EMF sensitivity from all the labs. It was actually kind of easy to see. Oh, good. Yeah, Donna, great. We still have it. So this is a really good one for just understanding the basics. Yeah, it is. It is good. You know, we live in a Western culture, and I believe part of the success of our profession is the ability to integrate with Western medicine and kind of understand and view things that are considered Western through an Eastern TCM paradigm, and then translate it back to Western for the clients. Because they don't have all the training we have. They don't really understand, I think, the TCM theory like we do. So what I do is I take the Western information, filter it through my TCM training, and then put it back into a usable form in a Western culture. Great. Good. I'm glad you guys are doing that work. So this will make this class, I think, even more interesting because you'll start to see some of it on the blood work. So EMF pathology. So now the EMFs move back to the exterior, leaving the body through the 6th level, the Shui Yin, affecting the liver, detoxification, and pericardium, cardiovascular system. In the body feedback system, the Shui Yin meridians correspond with processing of fats, detoxifying of blood, the uterus, the pituitary, your LH pathway. Symptoms affecting Shui Yin correspond with include compromised detoxification, swollen or fatty liver, obesity, high cholesterol, infertility, and metabolic and menstrual cycle disorders. So once it kind of gets to this level, it's almost like all the other levels are going to have to get cleaned up too. It's like we have to remove the exposure as much as possible and figure out where the body's healing capacity is not there. I know what I'm going to do. I have this really good illustration called the 12 earthly branches, which basically guides the healing process. And this is where we can get good information from the body on kind of where it's stuck. And actually, I think I'm going to add that real quick, that we can look at that picture and talk about that for a little bit, because I think that will make a lot of sense to you guys to understand where you need to focus the healing at to get this EMF pathology reversed, because you can reverse it. Okay, so we're going to take a 15-minute little break here. So that will put us back at, or we can make it 12 minutes or 13 minutes. Let's come back at 10:30. So try and get back right around 10:30. And I'm going to add this one little diagram for us to look at. All right. Okay.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.